Welcome to the All Tech Radio podcast on YouTube. This is the show where you learn about the news and technology related to working in the world of IT. No matter what your job is in IT, we cover all aspects of work-life balance, job duties, salary, and everything else related to computers and technology. I'm your host, Professor Robert McMillen. Joining me is my co-host, IT consultant Scott Portinga, and welcome once again to the show, Scott.
Good day, Robert.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm excited to announce that yesterday I just finished my latest book on Windows security, and it's coming out next week. I'll put an announcement out on LinkedIn and YouTube and X or whatever the heck they're calling it these days, Twitter, whatever. It's called Securing Windows Server 2022. And it's full of good stuff. Protect your Windows security network.
What kind of changes did you see from 2019 to 2022?
Oh, funny you should ask that because there was no 2019 book. It didn't. So basically, Microsoft came out with this book in 2016. It was actually called Securing Windows Server 2016. And so what I did basically was built on the 2016, updated it to 2022, and then added a bunch of stuff that I felt was missing from that original book. And so I gave it basically the same title, but with the 2022 at the end. But yeah, Microsoft stopped making that stuff. They said it was called Microsoft Official Courseware, and then they had another one called Microsoft Official Academic Courseware for colleges, and they said we're not doing it anymore. Done. so I pretty much just picked up where they left off, updated it and added new stuff, like I said, and so hopefully this will help a lot of people out because there really is no other book out there. It's shocking. There's really no other book out there on Windows security. I found one by this company called Packet. You ever hear Packet?
I have not.
Packet's, I think, an Indian company, and they asked me to write a book for them at one point, but their quality control is not historically been very good, and so there's tons of typos and not very good formatting, and they'll use people to write books that aren't necessarily been vetted properly and stuff like that. So I don't really count that one.
Yeah.
But by any certified person, who's a certified instructor or that kind of stuff, I have not seen any kind of book whatsoever. Have you seen it?
I have not. I got a question. As I'm quoting servers.
Okay.
And 2019 is the latest we've been quoting.
Right.
2022, is it safe to quote? Is it solid and not a problem? Or should I stick with 2019 for now?
Well, that is a good question. I would say, it's been out now for more than a year. It was done being in beta, about a year ago. So it's been released to manufacturer for over a year. I have not had any issues with it since it's been, RTM. Back in the beta days, it was, it had some bugs in it. I actually had a lot of bugs in it. You press some buttons and nothing would happen, and you press it 100 times, and nothing would happen. Yeah, and so. It's been much better. I've seen it deployed many times. I've used it for various different educational courses and not had any issues either.
Cool.
So, but that is a really good question because in years past, when you and I worked together on various different servers with new operating systems, we did tend to give it a good 2 years, didn't we?
Yeah. I would caveat for those folks out there quoting servers for clients. Look at their line of business applications. That will be your deciding factor on whether you go with, 2022 or 2019 or 2016.
Yeah.
If they're not approved for it, don't even go there. Don't think that you can make it work because when it doesn't, it's your fault.
That's true. Yeah, you do have to look at those applications, how they're going to use them, and the vendors, of those applications. They'll tell you whether or not it's supported on which operating system. But even more interesting is they'll tell you if it's supported on a virtual machine and which virtual machine.
Yes.
Because
even though you would think
issues.
It wouldn't make a difference, it does.
It does, yeah. If they don't have licenses for virtual machines, then you could be out of compliance, or it just may not work. As soon as it detects it's on a virtual machine, it'll say, "I'm not running this."
Yeah, and it may not be anything to do that they did intentionally, just something that in the way it's all put together,
right.
It just doesn't work like that.
That's right. Apple Vision Pro, is it $3,000? Is that what it was for that
I
VR
heard
headset?
3,500 at one point.
Yeah,
but
3,500.
I'm not
Maybe
sure.
you're right. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's even gone up now. Who knows?
It's in such high demand.
Yeah, right. I don't think so. But Tim Cook showed at the WWDC 2023 show. That's what would I don't know. I don't even know what that stands for. But WWDC, it must be some Apple show. I don't know.
It is.
So they were showing this, new Vision Pro device. So I guess it's been out for a few months now. That is so expensive. I doubt anybody's going to, buy it in any large quantities. But I could be wrong. So what's interesting though is that the demonstration was an application that showcased Windows XP. So he put the VR goggles on, connected it to the overhead monitor so people could see what he saw, and he pulled up the Windows XP operating system. So XP is alive.
WWDC stands for Worldwide Developers Conference.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. That makes sense. So I wanted to mention something I thought was kind of funny. So my son is going to college, and he's learning biology and stuff like that. And he's taking a writing class this summer. So, my wife and I are like, oh, I wonder if he's doing his homework. And so we went into the room, and he wasn't sitting at his desk. He was standing with his Oculus. So Oculus is the Facebook VR goggles. They were only like $300 or $300 or $400. I can't remember. I think they've gone up in price since then, but we got them about, I think it was Christmas of a year ago for him. And so he was standing with the VR goggles, and my wife said, oh man, he's playing games again, and says, what are you doing? And he had his hands up like this. And he says, I'm doing my homework.
I'm typing.
He had Microsoft Word up on his, or either that or Google. I'm not sure if he was using Google, but he had his word processor up, and he had a virtual keyboard, and he was just typing away in the air. That's pretty cool. Have you seen or heard anybody else doing that?
I have not. I've seen those laser projected keyboards.
Yes, I've seen those too. Yeah,
those are kind of cool too. But I've not seen anybody do it on with VR goggles.
Those laser projected ones, they would never work for me because I bang on the keyboards, I don't mean to. It's just the way I learned because, I'm old school. I learned on a manual typewriter, then an electric typewriter, and then eventually a computer keyboard. And by that time, my pattern of banging on a keyboard so I could get the stuff to show up on paper had already been established, and there's just no way that you're going to undo
ingrained.
that.
It's the old dog, new trick thing.
Yeah. So if you've got that laser thing pointed on a desk, then I'm doing, this on, I'm doing something, and eventually the tips of your fingers are going to get sore, if you type as hard on the thing as that I do. So, Not a great way to do it.
Oh, well.
So, I'll just actually use a real keyboard. My wife made me get a quieter keyboard, because I used to have the clickety-clack one. And she said, oh, no, you're getting rid of that.
That's got to go.
Yeah. So I got this ultra quiet one, which is really good. It hardly makes any noise except for, just a little bit, but it really is helpful. Made by Logitech, by the way. It's a light-up keyboard, too, so I can type in the dark. Now, why would I be typing in the dark, Scott? Don't even ask me why I'd be typing in the dark.
Nope.
It's not an appropriate question.
Moving on.
Google says all online content should be available for artificial intelligence training unless a publisher opts out. Oh, wow. That isn't right.
So they're going to go there through and scrape all the websites and all the knowledge of the internet?
Well, that's the thing. It's, say you write a book. I just wrote a book. Are you saying that Google's going to go ahead and put it out there unless I, tell them not to? Well, what if I don't know about this? What if I didn't know enough to tell them not to? So
what if you missed that email?
What's that?
What if you missed that email?
Yeah, what if I missed it? I never even got an email. I just happened to come across his website. The search engine Google has sent its proposal to the Australian government, urging policymakers to change existing copyright laws. If they can, I guess if they can change it in Australia, they can change it anywhere. I don't know.
Got to start somewhere. Apparently.
You got to start somewhere. I'm assuming they're doing this in all different countries, but yeah,
so
you can't.
They're asking authors to give up their copyright rights in order to make their product that they sell better?
Well, it's ad supported, but it's not necessarily sold. I mean, you could, if you look at the existing, AI that they've got, it doesn't cost anything. Bard is Google's, thing. Although I assume
it doesn't cost anything now.
Yeah, you're right. I assume that they'll probably have some sort of a pro version, that's not as throttled as the free one, sort of like what GPT does. But yeah, it seems ridiculous that I would have to opt out. What if, like I said, what if I didn't know about this?
Robert, I'd like access to all of your books, and I'd like to scan them and copy them. Is that okay?
And you're not going to pay me for them?
Oh, of course not. This is knowledge. It's a gift to humanity, Bob.
Great. That's awesome. Speaking of ChatGPT, they have dropped in subscribers by about 20% just in the last few weeks, according to some article that I read. Wow. It's already starting to lose its luster. I think a lot of people tried it, didn't find any use for it, and moved on. I think the people who are mostly finding, great use for it are programmers and developers. Just the web version. Now, integrating AI into, machinery and to, other, types of things, that's still going and will continue to change the world. But just the web version of people going in and fooling around with it, that seems to have lost its luster.
Yep.
Say hello to Downfall, a data leaking security hole in Intel chips. This is according to the Register. Another one, because they had one of these. What was it, like 6-7 years ago? Intel had some leak that was coming out of the chips, and you had to go in and you had to patch it. You remember that?
I do. Yeah.
So they got a new one, and Intel said when this happened years ago, they said that they didn't block this vulnerability. I'm paraphrasing, because they knew it would slow things down. And of course, they're in a CPU war with NVIDIA and others. So they didn't.
So if we make it secure, it's going to make it slower. So we're not going to do that?
Exactly. So they did come out with a patch. People had the option to patch the CPUs. And if you didn't, it was faster, but it was possibly going to leak data. So this new one has just come out. And it came out at Black Hat. Ooh, I missed Black Hat in Las Vegas. It was. I assume it's still in Las Vegas. It used to be.
Yeah. Where else?
Yeah, right. So Googlers have found not one but two security vulnerabilities in Intel. Oh, look at this, and AMD processors. This time it's AMD as well. That can be exploited to steal sensitive data from vulnerable computers' memory. Wow.
By memory, are they referring to RAM?
I would assume so. Yeah. So specifically, there's a flaw that can be abused by malware running on a system or a rogue logged-in user to lift passwords, secrets, and other information out of RAM. Yeah, that is the deal. So I don't know. I don't think they have a patch for this because anytime anything's released at Black Hat, that means it's in the wild. It's right. Oh, here goes Spectre and Meltdown. Those were the ones in 2018 that obtained sensitive information from memory and subsequent variations, such as foreshadow and LVI. So yeah, that was the old leaking CPUs. It's not good if your CPU is leaking, Scott. I don't know if you knew that.
No, it's a bad thing. It's hard to patch too.
Yeah, it sure is. Do you ever see people who put on too much of that thermal paste on their processor? And then it ends up frying the processor. I mean, literally, it's bubbling and frying your processor. You have to put just the right amount. The only problem is there's no, there's nothing in those little tubes that squeezes out just the right amount. There's
no.
no numbers, markings. When you go to fill up water to make, rice or something, it says 1 cup, 2 cup. There's nothing like that on thermal paste. So you could, unless, somebody shows you, how would you even know, right? Well, I guess you go to YouTube.
Yeah, they might, but it's kind of hard to, it is hard to sense how far it's going to squish out. So yeah, it's a touchy thing.
Yeah, well, and for those of you who are curious, it's just about the size of a pea is what I find. Not the size of a banana. Definitely the size of a pea. Unless it's a banana-shaped pea, that'd be okay.
That's true.
Yeah, that'd be all right. Lots of controversy surrounding AI. This is coming from BGR.com, especially the use of Chat GPT in papers, articles, and elsewhere. I've already got students in my classes that are copying and pasting stuff from AI, and it's pretty obvious. They, sometimes they'll even include "I hope that helps" at the bottom. That all the AI say at the end of their thing. Like, okay, that's definitely AI.
Oops.
And sometimes all I have to do is type the exact same. In my lab or quiz or whatever, there's a question. All I got to do is copy and paste that into OpenAI or whatever, and it'll tell me the exact same thing. I tell the students, I say, it's pretty easy to spot. It's, you don't even need an AI detector. They all pretty much sound, they have a certain pattern and cadence to the way they reply. It's pretty easy to figure that stuff out. But there are also tools that will check it as well. One interesting thing was that, there's these tools that sometimes have a lot of false positives, a lot of false negatives. What somebody found out was, if you do OpenAI or some other AI, sometimes they use a different font for the letter E, which is really a weird thing. But all the other fonts, for everything else are normal. And so the detector will detect that as AI every time. So the students have been figuring out to go in and change the font so that way it makes it less likely.
Control A and then change the font, and
there you go.
That would do it.
Yep.
If you're going to do this, do it right. Don't embarrass yourself.
That's right. So people are putting a lot of effort into creating content, as you know, and a bot can come by and scrape that information and knowledge and learn from it without any consent being involved. And that, of course, is a huge problem. Well, another big problem that's going on is that AI is copying data that is incorrect. And that's how we end up getting a lot of really bad results from AI. So another thing I tell my students is I say, hey, I'm going to read what it is that you said, and I'm going to test it out sometimes and see if what you said will actually work. Because if it is AI, now I didn't tell them to not use it. I didn't say don't use artificial intelligence. I said, go ahead and use it, read what it says, make sure you check that it's accurate before you post it, and then find some sort of article that backs up what it is that it says, because you have to have a source. And then it's fine, and feel free to use it, but use it responsibly, because your first day at work, if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to last long.
Oh no. It'll be clear pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Slack is getting, what's that?
I saw somebody said, best way to get an answer to a question, post the question on Reddit, log in through another account and give a wrong answer.
Oh,
that's a lot of people will not give you the right answer to something, but they love to correct people.
They love to correct. You're right about that.
Yep.
That is a good point. Yep. I've had a few people, not a lot, but a few people in the courses that I make for LinkedIn and other companies. They will, post a question, because you have the option to do that, and say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And then I have to reply back with, no, this is right. Here's my source. This is right. Here's my source. But people who love to point out, anything what they think is a mistake, they can be severely annoying. But in the case that you just mentioned, maybe they can be useful too. Who knows?
That's right. They may be annoying, but they have their uses.
When you meet with clients, have you met with any video conferencing ones recently?
I have not.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it's more for employees with each other than it is with clients. I mean, I'm sure, I met with some clients earlier today on Google Meet is what we used. Which is interesting because, Zoom, if you want to be on Zoom, you have to pay if you don't have a paid account. You have to pay if the meeting goes longer than a certain amount of time.
Yep.
And a similar thing with Teams as well. But Google Meet, you can be on as long as you want.
Yeah,
No
there's
limitation.
no limit.
Yeah. But the difference between a Google Meet and, say Teams or Zoom is that with Teams especially, you can add in, dozens and dozens of different applications. They're both adding artificial intelligence into them. So you can ask questions while you're in a Teams meeting. You can ask the AI questions to help answer questions that maybe your entire team has during the meeting, as well as, take care of any type of overhead that you need to take care of as well. So it's interesting that they're all adding AI into it. So one thing that one company that doesn't seem to be doing all that great with this is Slack. But Slack is getting a redesign. This is according to XDA developers. Slack's getting a redesign to look more like Microsoft Teams. And I'm looking at the screen right now, and sure enough, it looks like they use the color purple, but other than that, it looks exactly the same.
What? They didn't have purple copyrighted?
I guess not. I've had several people say, "Hey, join, get on my Slack." Whenever I get a new contract with some company, they say, "Hey, join the Slack so we can keep up to date on the project." And I go, this happened just a week or so ago, and I said, "Well, I can if you want." But I found that pretty much everybody who has a Slack stops using it within a week. They all get everybody in, logged in. Then some people tell jokes to each other, and then they all laugh and then stuff like that. But when it comes down to actually doing any business, I just don't see anybody doing it on Slack. People are slacking off. I don't know.
No, I've got a client that uses it extensively. They've got multiple offices that they can, the staff can talk between the offices. So it's actually a pretty good use of it.
What business are they in?
Dental offices.
Oh, that's interesting.
And they all kind of cover for each other.
Okay.
And they work with the same providers, and so yeah, for them it makes a lot of sense.
I've seen it work really well with banks too, because you need an answer right away, but you don't want to yell over, from the teller to a banker. Hey, somebody's depositing a fraudulent check. Would you come on over? It's much better just to type it into a text of some kind.
Much more subtle.
Yes. Yeah. You remember AOL Instant Messenger?
Oh yeah.
And MSN Messenger as well. It's so weird.
Yahoo had their own.
What's that?
Yahoo had their own.
Yahoo. Oh yeah. It's so weird that those went away. I mean, they were free. They were fast. They were really good. I don't know why, but they all just sort of went away. I just don't think that there's anything better than what they had.
No, but I can see the companies like Microsoft saying, do we want to support this? There's other options out there. We're not charging anybody for it anyway. We're not making any money on it, and yet we're supporting it. Cut it loose.
Well, AOL figured out how to make money because they were putting ads on it. But a lot of the other ones weren't. So you're right about that. We'll see. Slack is able to pick up some of the slack of their lost business, and by making themselves look like Teams. It's impossible to make it be Teams though, because Teams has its own separate administrative website where you can go in and set permissions and applications. I mean, there's hundreds of settings. For people who are member of Active Directory or Azure Entra ID or whatever. Anybody who's a member of that Active Directory, then you can go in and lock down what they can't do and set up what they can do and set up customizations. You could even have it if somebody writes an application, you can add it into Teams so it works in Teams. So you can run commands or run the application itself and watch the results along with everybody else. So there's a lot of cool things that Zoom and all these other ones, they're not even close to what Teams can do. But for some reason, especially academia, has just picked up Zoom and said, this is what we're doing.
Yeah. Zoom had kind of a rocky start there at the beginning of the pandemic, though, with the security issues. But Hopefully they have them all worked out. I'm assuming they do, but
I don't know, because one of the big questions is how much of this is going back to Chinese servers. Now, Zoom said absolutely none of this data is going back to Chinese servers. Of course, they were found out they were going back to Chinese servers because Zoom is partially owned by a Chinese company, and of course, the government in China wants to know what everybody's up to in America. So then they said, "Oh, so we didn't know about that. Okay, well, we'll block that." It's only another few weeks away before somebody else says, "Yep, they're back in China again."
Oh yeah, and the implications of that for people with that need HIPAA compliance.
Yeah.
SOX, there's all sorts of reasons not to use that product. It's, for data leakage.
Absolutely. Now, in academia, it's, they say, who cares if they steal our stuff? The funny thing is you can't even mention a person in your class to another teacher or another student outside of the class, because that is a violation of the Privacy Acts. But you're okay with China taking all this data? Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Seems a little weird.
Yeah, it is. It's not right.
Yeah. Google has changed the Google Chrome security update schedule from bi-weekly to weekly. This is from Bleeping Computer. That irritates me because, sometimes these security updates cause problems. Obviously, they can break, customizations, but they also have this annoying pop-up in the corner that say, hey, restart your Chrome. Well, I got 35,000 tabs open right now. I do not want to restart Chrome and log back into everything again with my multi-factor authentication. So you know how often Chrome gets updated. It gets updated whenever Windows forces my computer to restart.
Yep, exactly.
Otherwise, I'm not doing it. So, Google explains that Chromium is an open source project. Now, a lot of people think, okay, Google Chrome belongs to Google. Well, part of it does. Same thing with Edge, the Edge web browser from Microsoft. Part of that belongs to Microsoft, but part of it is an open source project. So they put their own coding on top of something that is open source. So legally, they can't charge money for it and use open source software, but they could charge for their own customizations. They could charge for that part of it, but of course they don't, because they make plenty of money off of ads and stuff like that whenever anybody uses their browser. So not too much to worry about there. So these changes, fixes, and security updates are then added to Chrome's development releases, where they're tested for stability, et cetera, et cetera. I haven't found too much stability issues with web browsers. I mean, how much do they really change these things?
I'm not, I haven't looked at the details of the updates, but yeah, I'm doing updates, once a week, once every 2 weeks for Chrome. Okay. Zoom is like weekly, it seems like.
Yeah, Zoom just forces you as soon as you try to join a meeting. It says, no, you got to be updated.
Yeah.
I love that when I'm about to teach a class, which I'm going to do tonight. And it's like 2 minutes before class starts. I don't want to, be there too early or too late. I want to be there just before it starts. So I join it, and all of a sudden, like, oh, I got to wait for updates. Now I'm going to be late to my own class. So.
And then it'll be really bad updates. And then it'll force a reboot. And then there'll be updates that need to apply from Windows.
And
then 5 minutes late.
Dogs and cats are together, and it's pandemonium.
The downfall of Western civilization.
They're mentioning in this article that back in 2020, it only averaged about once a month. So they're ramping up those updates. Keep you safe.
We only got so many jerks out there whose full-time job is to find errors and exploit them.
Yeah, that's true. And they get paid pretty well.
Well, hope not, but yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. Well, I remember 6-7 years ago, they were saying that it was $1 trillion a year they stole from everybody. I assume that's only gone up,
Yep.
And if you look at the GDP of Russia, that's $1.5 trillion. It's probably about the same as the GDP. Maybe all of Russia makes only money from oil and hacking. Maybe that's all they do. I don't know.
It wouldn't shock me.
Vioma orders pilot satellites for debris monitoring constellation. So there's a German company called Vioma. This is from Space News. they ordered a couple of satellites for its proposed space debris monitoring, and it's called Constellation. And so what it's going to do is it's going to monitor these, anytime some sort of satellite explodes or runs into another one and there's pieces everywhere. And then it's going to send that information back down to Earth, where hopefully other satellites will be able to get out of the way. So that's a good idea. At some point, we're going to need a vacuum cleaner up there, Just
yeah. Have you seen some of those simulations showing you where all the satellites are?
Oh, it's crazy.
It's like a green shell around the Earth.
Yeah. I saw this other small video that we call GIFs, and it's only lasts about 10 seconds or so, and it repeats on a loop. And it's we always think of the Earth is moving around the sun. Okay, but the sun is stationary. Well, we know it's not stationary, but we can't really picture,
right,
is it stationary? And then somebody posted a GIF of what was really happening. And it's a little video of the sun just tearing across, the galaxy as it's, orbiting the Milky Way at, I think it's like 60,000 miles an hour or something like that. And then there's the planets trying to keep up with it, trying to.
Yeah, they're kind of making that spiral pattern around it.
Yeah. And it's frightening. What if there's something we're about to run into? We can't see it. We can't stop it.
Can't change direction.
It's crazy, and you got things bouncing around the galaxy, and then you have other galaxies shooting their stuff into our galaxy. They can't keep to themselves, of course. So they're sending stuff in. It's just amazing that we don't have. I know early in the universe and early in the galaxy there was a lot more stuff ping ponging around, but still, it's amazing that something big doesn't hit us on a daily basis.
But, it is kind of surprising when they say, "Oh, yeah, we had this big asteroid that came within the moon's orbit," and it's like, and we don't see it coming.
No,
that's the weird part. There's stuff that happens that I had this idea that we had a clearer view of what was around us.
Yeah,
we don't at all.
No, we do not. There's various different satellites that track what's coming at us away from Earth, like coming at us from Jupiter and Saturn and all those things, coming from that direction. I can't really say north, south, east, and west because there is none in space. But we don't have really anything that's able to detect anything coming from the sun's direction because the sun is really bright and it's hard to detect anything. Yeah.
Take a look sometime. You'll see why.
So they're NASA and everybody else are trying to figure out a way, and I think they'll come up with it, that will detect something just before it smacks into us and kills us.
Yeah. This is your 5-minute warning.
Yeah, right. Hey, that's better than what we would have had, right?
That's true.
I don't know. Then in some cases, maybe it's best not to know.
That's true. If it's going to end anyway, then just let me dream.
Well, all right. So speaking of space, I have one more cool space story. This is from Gizmodo. And they said that back-to-back solar flares knocked out radio signals across the U.S. Why didn't anybody know? Nobody listens to radio anymore.
Well, I do when I'm driving, but for the most part, you don't.
Well, a lot of people are plugging their phones into their cars or getting an adapter that will, reach, like you can get an adapter right now that goes at the same frequency as an FM channel. And then you can play, what's on your phone through your speakers if you don't have a USB connection into your car. And, not everybody has a new car, obviously. But so the ones that are new, you can just plug your phone in and start playing, or you can get satellite or, all those different things. You can even pick up podcasts as well. Maybe some people are listening to us right now on, in their car, from podcasting. So all those different things. But what's interesting about this, like I said, is that it knocked out radio signals. It didn't even make the standard news. I mean, did you hear about it?
I did not.
Yeah. X 1.5 flare caused a strong radio blackout event on the daylit side of the Earth, which was most of the U.S. and Canada. So it hit us. It hit us, on the daylight side.
We probably had cell phone problems, but everyone thought, it always has problems.
Yeah, it could have caused that. Might have only been for a few minutes. Hard to say. Then there was a second solar flare that was detected by NOAA, which hit the Earth on Monday, August 7th, which happened just before 5 o'clock Eastern time. So people probably on their way home, on the East Coast probably noticed it. It caused the degradation and loss of radio signals. Yeah. So it reminded me of another event. Are you familiar with the Carrington event? Not everybody is.
But I couldn't give any details.
You may not be aware of it just because of the name of it, because not everybody knows it by name. But you probably are aware of a storm that happened years ago that caused a geomagnetic storm that happened years ago that caused problems. So it happened in September of 1859. They're referring to it as the Carrington event. And it had during solar cycle 10, which I'm not sure what that means, but it created this auroral display that were reported around the world. And it caused sparking and fires on telegraph stations. Now, we had only had usable electricity and in small amounts for a few decades at this point, right? I mean, Benjamin Franklin with his kite, that happened less than a century before this. And so then we started, using small scale electricity and electronics, like using a telegraph. So telegraphs were spread. The easiest way to spread the telegraph was along the railroad tracks, because wherever there was a rail track, you had a nice clear, path for one of these telegraphs. And so it was spread, wherever there was a train track, there was a telegraph. And then you'd have a telegraph station, which would receive Morse code. Strangely enough, I did get Morse code certified as a kid. I think I mentioned that before. But it is a very useful skill if we ever have another apocalypse. Other than that, it's kind of a waste. So this Carrington event, I think it was named after the place it was discovered. It was by British astronomer Richard Christopher Carrington. And this flare hit, and it didn't affect people, but it affected the telegraphs in a way that the wires caught fire and burned the telegraph stations, not the stations, but the poles there onto the ground. So we were without any way to communicate East Coast to West Coast or anywhere in between for months until they were able to go in and replace all those cables. And of course, they didn't really know. Most people didn't really know what was going on. They didn't have a telegraph to tell them, right?
I can see all the preachers now, all the wrath of God discussions.
Oh yeah, I'll bet there was some sinner somewhere in St. Louis that caused
is what
this.
Technology causes.
I'll bet that happened. So yeah, there was blackouts, damage, all different kinds of things. Like I said, there wasn't a lot going on electricity wise, but there was enough. And if we had that again, can you imagine? Can you imagine the problems that's going to cause? We have the sun puts out something called photons. So photons are these tiny little, when I say tiny, I mean like microscopic, tiny little beams of light. It's like the smallest measurement of light that I'm aware of anyway. And photons are so small, they will pass through the Earth. They'll go from, they'll go into one side of the Earth and come out the other side. And one of the things that they can do, if you're still using the old-fashioned, hard drives, that the spindle hard drives, that magnetically enter the ones and the zeros, photons can flip a 1 to a 0 and a 0 to a 1. So that's not good. Now, if you're using SSD drives, of course, you're less likely to have that happen. But anything that's magnetic is going to have a problem, and we're just not prepared for this. None of our computers, none of our electronics, none of them are prepared for a Carrington event. But it's got to happen again. We've had a bunch of smaller ones.
It's
since
eventually going to happen, and we're all so dependent on the internet and on video stuff like we're doing right now. Yeah, what are we going to do if it all goes down?
Yeah, that's right. This is going to be referred to as the before time. And then after it happens, we'll always talk about, you remember the before time?
Yeah.
You know, when we had electricity and internet and
Yeah.
we could listen
Remember
to the
we can
Alltech
watch
radio
Bob
show.
and Scott and yeah.
Yeah, remember that? Remember those years?
Yeah, dagnabbit. That's true.
That might be us saying that. Who knows? Anyway, I thought that was something that we should all be aware of. Although at this point, there's not a heck of a lot that we can do about it. But maybe in the future we will have lead-lined computer cases.
Lead shielding on my roof.
There you go. Did you know I bought a house which has concrete tiles?
Cool.
I've never seen a house with concrete tiles, but it is the quietest house ever. I mean, you can't hear anything that anybody does except for those dumb, what are the things, the weed whackers. Those things you can still hear. But nothing else that happens around here. Here, it's so quiet. It's so great. But when we called the insurance company to insure the house, they said, we've never heard of concrete tiles. So anyway, it's a fun little fact to have in there. And I like it. At one time, a tree crashed down into it before we bought it, and then they had to put the roof back together, so we could see in the attic that it got put back together with 2x10s. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how heavy the tiles are, in the roof. Well, we've had another fun, exciting Alltech radio show podcast, and I'm going to have all kinds of new great information next week, including the link to my new book on securing Windows Server 2022. Anything you want to advertise there, Scott?
Really at this point? No, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get together again next week. We'll see you then.